All right, all right, all right. February 6th, 2025. How's it going, Dave?
Very good. It's another cold, beautiful Duluth summer.
Did you snow blow it all today?
My plan was to, but the wind was blowing so high that it didn't make much sense. And plus, we're getting another big storm on tomorrow, so
Well,
the whole thing didn't make much sense.
I'm a bit of a wuss, so I have Duluth Snow, a local company, coming out and doing my snow blowing. It's for more reasons than I just don't want to do it, but so all
Yeah.
I have to do is my sidewalk and the end of the driveway when it gets pulled out. I did the sidewalk this morning at about 6:30. That was cold. That was very
Yes.
cold. And the wind was blowing, so that was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that
Well,
one was bad.
let's start off. As we start off every podcast, we'll talk about our exercise regime because, as you know, I've said this before, fitness is very important. When we were growing up, it was a very key part of it, part of our lives. Everybody was trying to get fit. They're trying to get us healthy. I don't know what changed since we were kids, but it seems to have gone against that. But I think it's important for us to talk about it each time. So I'll start. I think I worked out once and ran twice. So I had a very light week. How about you?
Yeah, I think I worked out 3 times there, and there was three half and halves where it was half weights, half cardio.
I'll tell
Um,
you, when I went running this last time, that was work to try to show up to the gym. I didn't want to go at all. But I
Especially with the
forced
cold
myself.
weather. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I just didn't feel, but I feel bad if I don't go for 4 or 5 days. My body just starts to just reject that.
But on the bright side, February we will gain 80 minutes of sunlight.
Oh, nice.
So we might be able to actually get outside, and we can get a little bit of warmth, be outside, and it'll be bright when we get home from work. So
Yeah, I don't know about you, but when the sun goes down, I start to shell up.
yeah,
So, all right, and everybody out there that's listening, if anybody's listening or watching this podcast, kind of the goal is to do something every day, and if you can, get out and do more. Get yourself active. It'll help you in the long run. It'll help you when you get older. Older gentlemen like ourselves need to be able to get around and be mobile. So, all right. Well, let's move on to our local news, our local Duluth news. Don't have a lot of stuff to cover on this today. We got a lot of national news to talk about, so I'm going to go over this local stuff really quickly. The first thing I want to talk about is Duluth Public Schools displacing 41 staff members. Now, I don't know if you read this, and I'll put a link to this stuff in the comments when we're done. This is
I
from
just
the
didn't
Duluth.
understand the word displacing. That's all.
Yeah, displacing doesn't mean laid off. That means they're being floated to other positions with the possibility of being laid off in the summer. So they're without. I don't know. I think that means they don't have anything to do, but they're not fired. And that's because of union contracts that they do this. There was some people that didn't have that in their contract and they were laid off earlier. I don't know if it's now or earlier this year, but Duluth schools are facing a $5 million budget deficit. And
Yeah, that's what they're saying.
And I want to bring up, because I read this in 3 different places because I wanted to see what people are saying about it. So the Minnesota, it used to be the Star Tribune and now it's just the Star. And when we used to live down in Minneapolis, we used to call it the Minnesota Red Star, which was appropriate. It says that state aid doesn't keep up with the cost to educate kids. This is from John Magnus, and he's the superintendent of Duluth schools. He said the state aid isn't going to keep up with the cost to educate kids, the loss of pandemic aid, plus unfunded mandates like unemployment insurance and increasing special education costs mean the course correction is a little more extreme in Duluth, which he said will have to cut $5 million. So he explicitly points out the unfunded mandates that the state put on place last time in the last session. And we talked about this in different places when I was running for Minnesota House last year. And people didn't believe it. I honestly had one of the candidates, and the other candidates not from my district, say to me, there are no unfunded mandates, no such thing. And I had to educate them what they were. This unemployment insurance, special education costs are huge. And
Correct.
they put a lot of regulations in place and they don't fund it. They don't give you a way to do anything with it. So the schools, what are they supposed to do? They have to do what they're being told, and they have to find a way to pay for it. And that's going to mean people getting cut from jobs.
And that's when if we had a true leader in the school district, he just wouldn't do it.
I don't know if he can
would,
say no. I mean, I think by law he's bound to it.
I know, but if he can't afford to do it, then he can't afford to do it. Someone needs to stand up to the legislator and say, look, you want this done, but you're not paying us to do it. As soon as you pay us to do it, then we'll start working on it.
I actually saw something where a bunch of school superintendents did a session in front of the Republican legislators because the Democrats weren't showing up for work. And they were going over that exact same thing. They're saying, you're giving us mandates. You're not funding it. We can't survive like this. So they're bringing this up to the people that need to be brought up to. But we need to see in this legislative session some pork cutting and some regulation trimming. And if they don't do that, they're just not going to be able to fund these schools. You know how much they cost per student? It's like $22,000, I think. We were talking about this last week with Art.
Yeah.
That's an incredible amount per student to have to pay. And
I mean, even the top end private schools in the cities don't cost that much.
And you know why? Because they don't have these mandates. They don't have the same mandates that the public schools have. So I feel for the guy. I feel for the guy coming in and trying to fight this and being lumped on time and again of mandates. We were talking about the mandates for daycare too. Why are daycares closing? It's because of these freaking mandates that the state keeps putting onto them. So the home daycare, they can't do those. They can't get up to standard code, so they just close down. And then, maybe you're getting an opening in one of the big daycare centers who can kind of deal with this. But then the cost gets to the point where you can't afford it.
Yeah, definitely true. But this John, the
Magus?
superintendent, Magus, the superintendent, when he got his COVID relief money, he hired a whole bunch of people.
that was an interesting thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, and now he's complaining about that he has to lay off the people that he knew that the money was going to end. This wasn't perpetual money, so he's partly to blame for that. The 100%, you're correct. The mandates are the biggest problem.
Yeah.
But some of this problem was on his own shoulders for believing that this money wasn't to keep coming. It's not.
Right. And he explicitly said the loss of pandemic aid plus unfunded mandates like unemployment insurance, increasing special education costs. Well, yeah, I mean, you can't get that pandemic aid and think you're going to keep getting it. And that was just a big slush giveaway fund.
Correct.
So I was looking at it, and then I went to the Duluth News Tribune, and they said that major factors have contributed to the district's need for budget cuts, including the June 30th expiration of federal pandemic relief funds, inflation, unfunded legislative mandates, and employee contract settlements. So hats off to Duluth News Tribune for mentioning all the things that were a problem. Because then I went to Fox 21, and they said, the budget reductions were caused by pandemic relief funding ending, as well as financial challenges, inflation, and special education costs. Financial challenges. So Fox 21 here locally in Duluth just sugarcoats it and overrides the unfunded mandates part, because I don't know why.
They're obviously getting a lot of money from our representatives.
They could be.
To not mention the obvious.
So that's all I had for local. Do you have anything local that came up recently?
No, I looked at the city council, and there's nothing really interesting to talk about there. So
okay, well then we could just move on from local news right now. Nice, quiet news isn't necessarily a bad thing for Duluth. Things happening all the time is sometimes chaotic, but we can talk about the Minnesota representatives actually met today for the first time since the session was supposed to start in January. The Democrats came to the table, the Republicans and Democrats got together and did a powwow to figure out, how are we going to get this so that we can actually start doing things for people. And that's a good thing. So the anarchist in me says, gosh, I wish they would have held out. I mean, it just don't give in to these guys and make them sit out the 2.5 months and just beat on them the whole time. The other side of me, which is the more reasonable side, says it's not ideal, but we need to get some stuff done and we have to make a compromise. So if you go in with the fact that they'll probably get the Democratic election in when the special election happens, they'll probably be tied. And I think the guy or the person won with like a lot of votes. The one that was not capable or not shouldn't have been in the district in the first place.
Correct.
You can assume, I guess, with pretty good confidence that a Democrat's going to win that, and they will be even Steven. So I don't mind the compromise. I think it's good. Everybody's getting back to work, but there's part of me that still says the Democrats were just beating themselves up, and I think that's the reason they came to the table, because they would easily could have just sat out the next 2 months or whenever. I think the special election in May, March.
Early okay. March, like the first week in March 5th, I believe.
Oh, it's coming up then.
Yeah, so we're only a month away, but you're right. The Democrat won by a decent margin, so they're pretty confident that the Democrat is going to win again.
Right.
Depends on what kind of message the Republicans want to send. How much? Are the Republicans going to spend a lot of money getting, showing how that everybody knew in the Democrat Party that he wasn't legal. Mm-hmm. I mean, as far as he shouldn't have been in the election in the first place. And two, they weren't going to show up. They didn't show up for the last 3 weeks.
Right.
So, it depends on if the GOP is going to actually push those issues, which, obviously isn't going to happen anymore. And we'll have to get into the recall vote here pretty quick also.
Yeah.
To see, I couldn't find any parts in the agreement that said anything about if the recall was still going to happen or not.
So as of the day before, I think yesterday, before they said that it was going to happen or they were going to come in, it was going full bore. Yeah. And I haven't heard anything since then either that they're either going to go forward or not. I think it's going to be very tough for them to go forward at this point. And I think one of the reasons the Democrats came to the table is because the Republicans were actually very serious about doing a recall. And while they, for the most part, aren't too worried, there are some districts that were pretty darn close, and they were going to go, all 66 districts were going to go forward with this recall process. So they get people ticked off, very close race, low voter turnout. It wouldn't be the same as the presidential election. They may not get all the voters they need. It could have been up in the air. So they could have lost even more seats, possibly. And it was a pretty big gamble for them to go forward.
Yeah, and I was wondering if that was part of the agreement to drop the recall vote. And
yeah, I don't know. I didn't see it in there, but maybe.
I couldn't. Yeah, I was. That might have been on the backside of under the table handshake that we're going to drop all the recalls.
Could be.
We'll
find out.
Yeah, we should be able to find out by next week's program. If the recall is going to continue or not.
Yeah, they wanted to start it by Tuesday. So, and there was a Supreme Court. They were going to the Supreme Court today, and I don't know if they did that. So I haven't been able to catch up on the news because I've been working all day. So unfortunately, big things happened today. On a different note, on the Senate, and you brought this up to my attention. So maybe you could talk about it. DFL senator proclaims loyalty is to the district and not the DFL before voting to end power sharing agreement with GOP. So they got one more senator on the Democrat side than they do the Republicans, and this whole power sharing agreement that they agreed to got axed completely.
Yeah,
so
correct.
You got the Democrats and the Republic on the House going, this is the will of the people and they want this. And then you got the DFL senators, same party, basically the same people, saying, well, that's great and all, but we're going to be in power and, screw you.
Yeah. As soon as they seen a chance to grab power, they took it. So that's why this power sharing agreement we were just talking about in the House is very questionable.
Well, what happens if they go into this election and the Republican wins? Does that mean that the Republicans are going to go in and say, well, that agreement we had was when you guys assumed you were going to be even, and now we're going to jettison you just like the Senate did? We'll see.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously they scream bloody murder, but it still, the one that was heading this on the Senate side was Democrat Judy Seeberger. And she admitted her voters in her district do not feel represented by what they've done in the legislature over the past 2 years. And she was going to vote for the people, not the party. But when it came right down to it, she was a good little lamb and voted for the party.
So they talk, but they do something different.
Correct. So if what's, as the saying goes, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. So if the Senate did it, and the House the House should easily be able to do it if they win the election in what is it, District 54 or something like that, or District
I think
50.
So. Yeah,
somewhere in there, in the Roseville area. So definitely, if they win that power sharing should be gone. According to the DFL rules.
Yeah, in essence, we've got the Senate's DFL, the governor's DFL, the House is split. We're still on the precipice of DFL control over everything. I have a feeling that I guess the strategy for the Republicans are if there's a bill coming up for a vote they don't like, nobody shows up for the vote. And then they don't have a quorum and they can't do the vote. Correct.
That's the only way they can get away with it.
It's crazy. I also noticed in the Senate that there's been a bill introduced to increase the minimum wage to $20 an hour by 2029. So the practice that is causing food franchises and places to shut down in California, the people in Minnesota, the senators in Minnesota said, that's a great idea. Let's do that.
Yeah.
And I can almost guarantee none of these people that introduced it, and you should see the list of freaks that introduced this bill, never have run a business, don't know what it means to run a business, and don't understand, or maybe they do understand, that increasing the minimum wage is basically increase. The only people that get more money is the government. So the people that are working in minimum wage, they get a small bump for a little while. They have more money to spend. And then what happens? The prices go up because they have to compensate to pay for these people. And the businesses aren't going to lose money for this. They're just going to raise their prices and pass it along to the consumer. You've also got other people that were making what's the new minimum wage, and now they don't want to just be at minimum wage. They want to get a bump too. So now it starts rising everybody up, which is, oh yeah, seemingly great. Everybody's got more money, but then the prices go up again. And so you as a consumer just have less spending power with your money. And it hurts the people that are in the middle class the most because they can't get that bump up from what the increase in minimum wage was. So they're buffered. So they're the ones that aren't getting anything. People who are already rich, they don't care. I mean, that doesn't mean anything to them to pay an extra, $5 or something. The only people that make out is the government, because what do they get? Payroll taxes, right? That increases. So now they've got more taxes. So Congratulations,
and
we're
more
giving
inflation,
yourself a raise. Sorry again.
and more inflation.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
so for them, everything across the board goes up. They collect more sales tax money.
Right. And they look like heroes because people buy into the fact that, oh yeah, I'm making more money, or oh yeah, we're doing such a good thing. We're making these people get more money because, you know, when you're a high school student, you should be making enough to afford a house and a car because that's who's
Right.
making minimum wage. They're the people starting out. If you're an adult making minimum wage, probably you've made some life decisions that are very bad because it's not supposed to be something you stay at year upon year, right? Even if you start
Correct.
at minimum wage, the next year you should be getting a small bump. You should be moving up the ladder. So it's just another stupid policy that hurts everybody except the government. They're fine.
Yeah, I used to work at a place down in the Twin Cities that we had some extremely no skill jobs. It was supposed to, it was meant for people that were completely unskilled. But at the time, uh, minimum wage was like 11.83 or something like that, and we couldn't get anybody to show up for it.
Mm-hmm.
So we were paying 14.50, and way over minimum wage because McDonald's could afford way over minimum wage, or we couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So no one ever at that place should ever get $20 to do the job that they were paid to do.
Yeah, I saw nurses at Scholastica, nursing students and people going into nursing profession, and they were making less than people at McDonald's were making. And so you have
Correct.
to make a decision on your part. Do I do this job that requires all this training and requires me to go to school and and spend all this money and do all this arduous stuff on my body, expose myself to things that are horrible? Or do I just go to a shift job and make more money and go home at the end of the day and not think about work? And
Right.
that's not good because there are people that will make the decision that it's not worth it. And so if they get more in there, well, guess what? The people that are nurses are working at nursing homes or daycare centers want more than minimum wage. And guess who gets to pay it? The mothers and the fathers who have kids there, the sons and daughters who have parents in nursing homes, or the people that are in the nursing homes. It just really just is it's a wealth transfer to the government, and that's all it is.
Yeah, basically, yeah. That's the
Okay.
best way to explain it.
Well, that's all I have for state news. Do you have anything to add for that?
The only one the only state news that really caught my interest was the city of Minneapolis paid $600,000 to a lady who was arrested by Derek Chauvin. If you remember, Derek Chauvin was the guy who arrested George Floyd, which caused all the problems, and knelt on the
Right.
guy's back. She was driving drunk and got pulled over by him and his partner. And for some reason, she was yanked out of the vehicle, and he had to put his knee in her back to handcuff her. The stories that I've read don't say anything about, what led to her having to be pulled out of the vehicle
Mm-hmm.
and handcuffed and brought to prison. But either way, basically, if you know Derek Chauvin, Officer Chauvin, or have heard of him, just go to the Minneapolis City Council and they'll pay you off for it.
So they paid her $600,000 because he put his knee in her back.
Correct.
His ex-wife should and just go to the city council. You know what he did to me. I mean, good Lord, she could get like multiple millions of dollars. My God.
So
Oh
it
man,
just it
Minneapolis
it's
City
showing,
Council. Oh,
yeah, and then Mayor Small Fry, he he believes he should be reelected, and he's talking about going for another term. So
Yeah, I saw him do a news conference and talk about how you're not illegal. So talking about the illegal aliens in the city. You're not illegal here. We love you. We want to embrace you. So he's really playing up to the sensitivity factor in Minneapolis, which is what you do to win there. Because I tell you, you should put a wall around Minneapolis and just, call that a kook center. And, that's
right,
an insane asylum, and you wouldn't be too far off. And I have relatives that live there who aren't bad. So I'm not saying everybody is crazy, but you talk about the city council, the Met Center, the mayor, man, they are way off, way
right,
off. And when I went down there, so I used to work down there in the 90s. When I first started going down there, it was clean, it was safe, night and day. I mean, we were outside, out in Minneapolis during the night for concerts or basketball games or something. I never felt a one bit of threat. And then pretty soon, nighttime, it's getting a little sketchy in some places. I think we went to a concert once. We were walking out of there, and it was a little dicey. Not horrible, but there's people challenge you out down there. People walking across the road all of a sudden in the middle of the night without, even thinking about the traffic lights or anything like that, or people that look like, I do have one family member that got cold clocked because he came out of a bar once. They took his phone. And then I was working down there, and that was during the day. It started getting bad, and there
yeah,
was knifings in the Skyway. And the last thing I said, so I left there in 2015. And the last time I remember seeing a picture of the building I used to work, there was a body bag on top of somebody who got knifed right outside during the day. So whatever they've done since the 1990s was just bad. Every year it got worse and worse and worse. And the Minneapolis City Council, you should take a look at them sometimes. Listen to them talk.
yeah,
It's an insane asylum there. I swear to God.
yeah. And then you're basically punishing the police for doing what they've been trained to do.
Right. It was almost like a depopulation effort on the police, trying to make sure that they lost as many people as possible. My
Right.
assumption my theory was that they were making the way for a federal police force, because if you can't hire them locally, sooner or later, you got to do something and let the
Yeah.
feds come in and do it, which that would not be a good thing.
Well, I mean, yeah. Technically, we already do have it with the highway patrol, but
It's a little different. Yeah.
that's a little different, and that's a whole nother show. You could talk about that. So
Yeah.
um,
So let's move on. We're a half hour in, and I think we're going to have a while to talk about some of the national news, because I'll tell you what, it's been 18 days since Trump got inaugurated. It's been wild.
right.
There's a lot happening at warp speed. And the thing I want to talk about first is the USAID shutdown, which is, were you aware of this department?
No, I was not.
I wasn't either. I had no idea. And I was a little apprehensive about Trump and his nominees kind of playing their hand about what they were going to do between the election and the inauguration. And they stopped that pretty quickly. I think it was like a week or two, and then all of a sudden they went on dark mode. They didn't say anything. But before that, they were kind of letting out what they're going to do. And this USAID shutdown is a stroke of genius that they came in stealthily and just walloped them. I think they're going from, like, I don't know, 10,000 employees to 400. That was the last talk from Rubio. And the amount of hand wringing from the senators and the politicians, when you start exposing corruption, the people that are telling you to be quiet are the ones doing the corruption. And
Absolutely.
it's been amazing seeing this. It's really refreshing to see these guys expose themselves. Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. So I got especially with Elizabeth Warren, I got a quote here that said, she did a tweet, said, bird flu outbreaks are driving up egg prices for families. Now Elon Musk wants to shut down USAID, the agency responsible for monitoring outbreaks in dozens of foreign countries. With egg prices increasing grocery bills, why halt efforts to prevent a U.S. bird flu crisis? So a couple things about this. As far as I knew up until the election, egg prices were a stupid thing to be talking about. That's what
Right.
that's what they were saying. Why are you even talking about egg prices? Egg prices are fine. There's no problem. The second thing is USAID doesn't have anything to do with bird flu. It doesn't have anything to do with talking about foreign countries and preventing a bird flu crisis. So what is the senator on about on this?
Right.
And then I think you sent me this link of her doing a press conference and just railing about Elon Musk. And with a quote from her is, this is a direct quote, no one elected Elon Musk to nothing. There's your educated senator for you right there, Dave.
Yeah.
And so she's railing about Elon Musk and nobody elected him. And, we can't have him getting this stuff. And I was just wondering about this. You know who that is? This
Oh, yeah,
guy,
that's George Soros's son.
yeah, Alex Soros, who's hobnobbing with all the Democrats, including, wait, who's this? I recognize this woman. That's Elizabeth
Yeah.
Warren. You start looking at this and see what kind of access this billionaire has and has had. And then why are you talking about Elon Musk? She doesn't have a leg to stand on. She's right here with him right now.
Yep.
And George Soros and Alex has taken over his company now, have contributed multiple millions of dollars to get state prosecutors elected, state officials elected. So what they thought was, instead of going from the top down, they went from the bottom up. They got that low level of officials elected. And that's been causing the chaos the last few years in our states, including our current Attorney General of Minnesota. I think he's a Soros-backed guy.
You're very correct.
That is just a crazy thing for Elizabeth Warren. It's a hill to die on, but all these guys are just railing against this. And the more I hear about this USAID, the more I think, why was this ever allowed to do anything? There is rumor, and I can't tell you this is true, but $8 million went to Politico, the far left political website.
Yeah.
And when they shut down USAID, coincidentally, they couldn't make payroll. How about that?
Right. Well, I started reading up on the USAID. It said 97% of the money goes through the fingers of Democrats before it goes to foreign countries.
Right.
So obviously that's why the Democrats are screaming so loud, is because that's their money laundering area.
Right.
Because it's going through their hands, then going to the foreign countries. So they can get kickbacks. Mostly so they can get their hands on it.
Mm-hmm. And
if you find out what these senators are worth at $174,000 a year,
right,
you would know that something, the math just does not add up. And fortunately, that the new appointee from Trump, Pam Bondi, is going to take a lot closer look into that.
Just as an aside with Pam Bondi, she's older than us.
Oh, really?
She looks fantastic.
Yeah.
So it means nothing, but I was just shocked. I was shocked to find out. Either I look horrible or she looks really good. I'm going with she looks really good. Yeah, I probably look horrible.
Well, I mean, another unelected official in Minnesota is the Met Council.
Oh, God. They're the worst.
And they're spending billions and failing to spend, and everything that they do is over budget, takes too long, and none of those people are elected. We need Elon, when he's done with the federal government, to come to Minnesota and fix Tim Walz.
It's sad to think that we need somebody to come and save us and we can't save ourselves, but my God, the level of people in Minnesota it seems like that's what it's going to take. The Met Council it's almost like they have a misery index to find out just how much they can punish the people that live in that city.
Right.
every plan they have, I look at it and I swear to God, they're just exacting some revenge. I don't know what for, but oh my God.
Right. And I and to see what even is more amazing is Elon is finding all this government waste, and the Democrats are mad about it.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
How can hey, he already saved $250 billion.
Right.
Why are you mad?
Yeah. Why would that make you mad? For sure.
Yeah, why does it make you mad?
Yeah.
You know,
There's one reason, like you said, money laundering.
yeah. So they can't take credit for something that's, you know, they've screwed up in the first place.
So here's I saw a tweet that said, here's the reason why Elon Musk and others have been trying to take a look at the USAID. So here's the top 5 priorities. 1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces. $70,000 for production of a DEI musical in Ireland. 47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. I don't even know what a transgender opera is. I guess I don't want to know. 32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. So my point is this. If you want to have a transgender comic book, I don't care. Go ahead and have it. Just don't stick it in a school if that would be all right with you. Yeah. And then pay for it yourself. I'm not opposing doing any of these things. Not on our dime. If you want to have something that does this, you get volunteers to pay for it or you have them pay for it themselves. It's not our business to have to siphon that money off of taxpayers where I don't care how much it is either. 47,000 in the grand scheme of things is not a lot for the US government, but it's nickel and dime here and there. Is that 5 more cents in my pocket? I'll take the 5 cents instead of giving it for a transgender opera in Colombia. And it's setting a narrative worldwide. That's what this thing was, this USAID. And I'm sure there's other government agencies like this. And that's not why it was intended, what it was intended for. The original intent was under John F. Kennedy, was taking it apart away from what's Rubio in charge of? Well, wherever it was, what's going back into, it was all this disparate groups that weren't getting anything done. And during the Cold War, they needed something like this. But now it's been turned around. And since Obama was in office, and I'm not here to rail on Obama, but he was like the worst president I knew for a long time until Biden came along. There was a law in the 1940s that came into play after World War II because all of the propaganda that was done and what they saw in Germany, and said there was a law that said you can't propagandize against the American public. And Obama got that law eliminated. And the USAID has been using that law being gone to propagandize against not only the world, but the United States.
Well, you're right on one thing. Obama was the worst economic president in history. He was the first president not to hit 3% increase in GDP during his term. So in 8 years, he wasn't able to increase the economy by 3%. Mm-hmm. So he was the first one to do that. In the second quarter of when Trump took over, Trump already was at 5.5 or something like that. So it didn't take Trump very long to figure that out. Mm-hmm. But you're also right that Biden made things so much worse with the inflation that it pales in comparison to whatever Obama did.
Well, the interesting thing to me from those two is I see Biden as being not in charge. I don't think he was really running the show. And there was a group of people that were doing it, and they were trying to basically make this place overrun. That seemed to be their intent for 4 years. Jimmy Carter as president, I'm old enough to remember him being president, and he was kind of the first one I remember. He was just a bad president because he was over his head. He didn't know what he was doing. Yeah. He had a lot of grand ideas, but both parties turned on him. And well, the Republicans are going to turn on him no matter what. The Democrats turned on him. That was something to see. But Obama, it seemed like he was intent on destroying this country completely.
Correct.
And that, like, it was his mission to do it. And I think he had a lot to say about doing it. I also think he was run by committee as well. But I think his overall plan was to dismantle this country because he didn't like it. And I still see that. And there's a guy that came into office at, I want to say he had $400,000 in the bank. And he's a multimillionaire with, resorts on Maui and East Coast and California and everything.
Yeah.
Because of why? Book deals. There's the biggest money laundering scheme you ever saw, is book deals.
Right.
If you ever wonder why a senator has multiple millions of dollars, I almost guarantee it's speaking fees and book deals. Yeah, because I want to hear what AOC has to say about any topic. So I got another one here.
Another part of the squad.
Another part of the squad. Yeah, you got it. Ilhan Omar, very upset how Trump is dismantling USAID. It's a really, really a sad day in America. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. And I saw her on another show where she was talking about this, and the person said, the reporter said, so you say this and it helped her, because she said, this helped me, it helped save my life. This is aid I got when I was in Somalia, and now she's a frickin' Minnesota senator. Yeah. We'll talk about that in a second. But the reporter actually came out and said, well, what is the compelling reason? There's people that say, I don't want to pay for that. I would rather have the money for myself. And you may think it's all a good thing, but I shouldn't, as an American taxpayer, have to pay for it. She had no answer for that. She just rounded around politics speak and didn't answer the question. And he is a good example of why I think anybody who's not a natural citizen maybe shouldn't be a senator or it shouldn't be in politics. And essentially anybody who has dual citizenship should not be. Anybody who's a first generation immigrant shouldn't be a politician or shouldn't be allowed in politics. And anybody who has dual citizenship should have to renounce the non-U.S. citizenship to be able to run for office. Any office, state, local, or national.
Yeah, because she has come out many times saying that Somalia is her number one priority.
Yeah. I mean, they've got her on camera talking to a bunch of Somalis about what to do if ICE shows up. And she was specifically talking to illegal immigrants, saying, here's the things that you can do. Here's the things you don't have to do. I'm not going to repeat them here, but and she was speaking to them in Somalia language. I don't know what that's called.
I don't either.
But yeah, if you have dual citizenship, first of all, you can't serve two masters. And I don't want somebody, especially at the national level, but even at the local or state level, that has an exit strategy. Correct. I want them to have to eat their own dog food here. But even first generation immigrants too, I don't think they should be qualified to be able to run for office. Their kids can, they can't.
Right. Well, her daughter's, I've seen some statements from her daughter that makes her worse than.
Yeah. So. But at least she'd have grown up here,
Right. Yeah, definitely.
Let's talk about a day without immigrants. So Fox 9 News had a thing. Monday was a day without immigrants, where immigrants were supposed to stay away from work to show just how essential they were. Now, I'm wondering why they're conflicting, why they just say immigrants. I don't think anybody's talking about legal immigrants that has a problem with legal immigrants. But they have to lump them together to make the scare tactics sound like they're talking about anybody who's immigrated here. Secondly, I did not notice on Monday, unless I read this report, that this even happened.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if that's because of USAID going out. I mean, there's been protests scheduled this week that had nobody showing up. And I'm wondering how much was that funding these protests?
Well, there, it was in. I heard it was in all 50 states, at all 50 capitals. So someone has to organize that. Someone has to get paid. I've seen a lot of pre-published signs. So someone's paying for that.
Right.
So let's follow the money backwards and see who is paying. Are we back to our George Soros study? Or the kid that's is the kid paying for it?
Right.
Trying to ruin America for whatever reason.
Well, that's what George wanted, so
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. But I bet you they'd rather not do it and have USAID pay for it instead, so we could pay for our own destruction.
Correct.
Well, I want to move on to a little different topic. I want to talk about the Grammys. Did you watch the Grammys? I know you watch Grammys all the time, don't you?
I used to, but it's been so poor lately that it's probably been a decade since I've actually watched it because I don't recognize any of the music there anymore. So,
well, you're going to have to tell me if this comes through or not. This was at the Grammys.
Oh yeah, I can see that. So this guy, his music is so bad that Tom Petty, when he was alive, sued the guy for stealing one of his songs. And it went to trial for one day, and then Sam Smith he admitted that he stole it and paid Tom Petty for it and blah blah blah. So this guy can't write music. He can't do anything. He stole it, and now he has to do shows instead of concerts because he has to make a scene. Otherwise, no one will even know he's even there because he can't write music, so he's
going for the
shock
value.
Yeah, so he's just completely at shock value.
You want to see the funniest part? Watch this.
Yeah.
So, Satanic, sponsored by Pfizer. That seems appropriate. I don't know.
Explains a lot. It definitely explains a lot.
Let's see. Let's talk about a sovereign nation fund. Now, what do you know about this? I haven't had time to investigate this. I just wanted to bring it up that Trump has talked about having a sovereign nation fund, and what I read was he was talking about like Twitter and having maybe an investment in Twitter for the United States. Can you explain it? Do you know enough about it to explain it?
That's basically what I got out of the whole, what I've read about it too, is basically a mutual fund, a stock fund that you buy from your broker, but it would be the federal government investing in local corporations, oil fields, the Gulf of America oil fields, energy, U.S. energy, stuff like that, so that it can tap into other places that normally you wouldn't be able to buy a stock on. So they were talking about having a fund to like over the counter stock funds, basically.
I don't know if I like this idea. I don't like the government getting into the business of betting on companies like that. Not to say they don't do it already in other ways.
Right.
But I need to find out more about this. Right now, the initial thought of it was, I don't know if I like this idea. It's great if we had all this money and we're generating all this revenue and we didn't have to do it ourselves. At the same time, I don't know if that's the role of the government, is to have their hands in something like this.
I'm kind of on the fence on that one too, because on the positive side, you have investors putting money into this fund, so the fund could go look for oil or look for natural gas
Mm-hmm.
or invest in other companies instead of the government just waking up one morning and say, well, we're going to raise taxes on climate change. Yeah, we're going to get rid of your air conditioner because you're killing the climate. So we're going to steal your money and we're going to put it into this fund, and then the government will make money.
Right.
So
Yeah, exactly.
That's one positive side. I agree with you. I'm still on the fence. I needed to hear a little bit more about it before we start, allowing them to take more of our money.
Yeah, having that much influence, and it just seems like overreach to me a little bit. I will, like I said, I will find out more as well.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to USAID, but Bill Gates seems pretty scared about Elon Musk digging into USAID. And I saw a couple different interviews he did, and I have a couple links to those interviews. He must have done them on the same day because he's wearing the same salmon-colored sweatshirt. And this guy I just don't know, man. Why doesn't he just retire and get out of the light? I read something that said if Epstein's client list is let go, he's leaving the country. I don't know if I believe it, but that's what I read. And but I also heard his wife left him because of his association with Epstein, and what Epstein is known for is pretty bad.
Correct.
And then all the stuff that he gets into, I just don't trust this guy. I think he's pure evil in my book. Smart guy for computers, stole a lot of good stuff and consolidated a lot of software. That's what he was known for in the 80s and 90s. But he's very worried about Elon Musk, and I like it.
Well, he should be more afraid of Pam Bondi because the new attorney general, she said she was going to release the Epstein list and maybe actually start looking into it. That
would be good. I would be scared of Pam Bondi. I would never cross that woman. I'm 6'2", 210, and I think she would beat me like a rag doll. Verbally, she'd just have me sobbing like a child.
Yeah, right now you're pretty low on the list, but
yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm not on her radar at all, but I would never want to be on her radar.
Correct. Yeah.
I had a list of stuff that Trump has accomplished since he took over, but let's just talk about his confirmations that he has gotten done.
Yeah.
So far, I think he's at 12. And I don't know, this was yesterday or the day before I got this list together, so I don't know if anything's changed, but I don't think it has. Christopher Wright, Secretary of Energy. Doug Burgum, Secretary of the Interior. Doug Collins, Secretary of Veteran Affairs. John Ratcliffe, CIA. Kristi Noem, DHS. Lee Zeldin, EPA. Marco Rubio, Secretary of State. And that's where the USAID is getting rolled back into, which was Kennedy took it out of. Pam Bondi, Attorney General, that's going to be great. Yeah. Did you know Marco Rubio got to be Secretary of State with a 99-0 vote? 99-0?
That seems a little creepy. Doesn't seem right.
That doesn't make me feel good at all. Pam Bondi was 52-46. I like those better.
Yeah, that seems more normal.
Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, 51-50. Sean Duffy, Secretary of Transportation. Scott Bessent, Secretary of Treasury. And Scott Turner, HUD Secretary. So that's all the ones that have gotten through now. But we're still waiting for a pretty big one, which is Kash Patel as FDI Director.
Right.
We've got a bunch of other ones on there, like Linda McMahon for Secretary of Education. That when she gets confirmed, that's going to be a wild ride.
Yeah, because her job is to shut it down.
Yeah, work your way out of a job because he wants to. He wants
Luckily,
to work.
She has a ton of money. She has a ton of money from what I think it's WWE wrestling or something like that. But
Oh yeah,
I think
that's
she's
Vince McMahon's wife, right?
correct. So they've got plenty of money. So to her to shut down the education, she'll be fine. So
Oh yeah, this isn't her career. This is just a play thing she's playing with. But
right,
a lot of people are. Well, I've heard a lot of people lamenting getting rid of the the education department, national education department, as if it's been around since the beginning of time. Jimmy Carter, it was under him that this got created.
yeah,
And so we weren't that affected by it at first when we went to school. But look at how it's changed since we went to school. Even when my kids were going to school, I was baffled by how bad it was. And we already have a state level Department of Education. Why do we need a federal level too? Why do we need all that bureaucracy and an extra level of mandates and funding and everything? Just get rid of it. Put it down to the state level, and then the local level. And that's the local levels where the power should be.
correct.
And
Well,
even
we're
more
spending,
precise, it should be the parents at the local level that should have the most power.
yeah, oh, definitely. But now you get rid of the federal, that saves hundreds of millions of dollars in payroll we don't need.
Mm-hmm.
You get rid of it basically at the state level. That's hundreds of millions of dollars we don't need to spend,
Mm-hmm.
and bring it back locally. You know, how many people do we need to decide exactly the same thing?
Right. And I heard it was Trump's press secretary talking about how it was like 77% of the students are not proficient in math to the level they should be.
Correct.
So it's clearly not working. We had freaking geniuses back in the 40s working for, look at what all that did. Look at everything they did. I wonder what the Department of Education looked like in old Greece when they had mathematicians doing, all this crazy structures and, it's just not necessary. Like you said, it's not just money. It's regulations. It's this idea that we have to have the same everywhere. It doesn't have to be that way. And if we concentrate on the basics, the reading and the writing of English, mathematics, you get those three down, you're really far ahead of everything else. Everything else is kind of gravy, I think. And especially number one, being able to read. Because if you can read, you can educate yourself.
Correct.
Not everybody's good at math. I get that, but some people really are, and that should be encouraged because mathematics is very, very important. I don't care what the computers can do. You got to be able to understand what it's doing. Otherwise, we're going to go into a wasteland here. But reading is so essential to be able to not just listen to what people have to say about things, but to be able to research yourself.
Correct. Yeah.
So I hope he eliminates it, and I hope if that happens, the state, I don't see us getting rid of the state level Department of Education anytime soon, but I hope they take up the challenge and say, let's get the regulations to be better so that we're just teaching the kids what they need. And you know what? If they can't read or do math and at the level they need to, it's not getting rid of the standards. It's making them go to extra classes. Maybe they, instead of doing an hour of English a day, they do 2 or 3 hours English a day. I guarantee they can learn it because kids aren't stupid. And there's no race that you have to look at to say, well, this race is, they can't do it. No, it's not that. Humans can learn. It just takes amount of time and dedication. So if you're really bad at it, what you're going to get out of school is you're going to be able to read, and you're going to be able to do math, and you may not be very good at history because you had to cut those classes because you had to go to more reading classes. But you know what?
Yeah.
Make that up outside of school. And Robert F. Kennedy is Houston. I saw something. It was a great meme because it was like you opened up this can of chips or something. It's just a picture of Robert F. Kennedy giving you a guilt trip. I think it would be very effective. Just no, you don't want to do that. I got a couple more things, and then I'm just going to open it up and see if you have anything else. The Kamala Harris transcript, the unedited transcript came out and was released. So the whole thing, and stuff
Yeah.
you would normally see edited out, and it was painful to watch it. I don't know if you watched it at all. I watched about 10 minutes of it. Just hearing her try to answer questions, it just hurt, physically hurt to listen to it.
Yeah,
But
the only one I really caught was, so why do you want to be president? And
how could you not answer that?
that's the simplest question ever, and she had trouble answering it, and they edited that out of the thing because she did so more poorly at it.
Right. Well, she went on The View, and she's, the one, I can't remember what her name is, Sunny or Happy or whatever her name is. She gives her this softball question, which was, how are you be different? What would you change about the Biden administration? And she said, nothing. I can't think of a thing. And Sunny, you look at her face, was like, I gave you the simplest question. What are you answering? People are suffering. The prices are going up. Illegal immigration. You got to have something here,
right.
Because she wanted to both take credit for it and distance herself from it, like she was going to be something different. Which is the funny thing is, after the election was over, she still was in office for 2 months, but she didn't implement any of the things that she wanted to. She didn't push Joe to implement anything. It was just about running out the clock for her, apparently. So if you get a chance, I'll try to put a link to the PDF of the transcript. It's better to read it than it is to listen to it. Although reading it somehow will make your eyes cross at some point, maybe your blood coming out of your ear after, but you'll get that from listening to it too.
Right.
The last thing I have is Joe Biden has signed up with a talent agency because with all the acting he did the last 4 years, he figures, I should be getting paid for this. So I'm looking forward to Weekend at Bernie's 3 because I think he'd be qualified for that one. Or as somebody put on one of the tweets, a corpse on the CSI.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. That's accurate.
He also is like a Roomba, when he was leaving the room, he'd going back and forth. So he could do that, I guess. Yeah,
I mean, his handlers, the people that instructed him to do things, where are these people? I mean, obviously he failed at hiring the right people to make himself look decent.
Yeah.
So he even failed at that.
Yeah, he's
he couldn't walk up the steps to the airplane.
Yeah.
So turn the plane around so people can't watch you go up it. That's a pretty simple thing.
What they did was gave him the short steps. So instead of going up the long steps, he went up the short steps. It's almost like the Department of Education. If people are failing at math, well, we'll just take away the standards so they won't be failing anymore. It's kind of similar to that. I mean, just keep reducing standards until everybody gets through. And then why is everything so bad?
It's funny because Trump called those steps the children's stairs.
I'm sorry. When he called Trudeau Governor Trudeau, I was laughing. That's so classic. I wouldn't be surprised if they met again. He just rubs him on the top of the head. Hey, you little scamp! Look at you! Get out of here! So, we're 2.5 weeks into the Trump presidency and first day into Minnesota House. They are, of course, adjourned until Monday because it was a tough week for the Democrats. They had to show up to work today. It was tough. They need a mental day off. Anything else? Anything else got to cover?
To me, the funniest thing that happened this week was Ken Martin. He was the head of the DFL for the Minnesota. He got elected to the national DNC, and I don't know who his vice chair was, but for a group that only screams DEI, they go and elect two white males to run their party.
It's classic Democrats. Did you watch any of that? We were talking about this before the show. I watched part of that. It was, oh my God, it was chaos. They were trying to talk. People were shouting them down from the audience. They didn't want to talk about any of it. This one lady, her opening statement was to sing a song. I mean, it was just crazy.
It was just complete embarrassment. And
Oh,
now they hire Ken Martin, who born and raised in Minnesota or whatever, but Minnesota's been a blue state for the last 100 years.
I think Richard Nixon was the last Republican that won.
Yeah. So Reagan couldn't win Minnesota either.
Well,
So how good is this? So he thinks he's so bright and intelligent because he's a Democrat who could win a Democrat state.
yeah.
Wow.
I don't know about you.
Do that.
I don't know about you, but when I heard he got elected, I was like, please don't be from Minnesota. Please don't be from Minnesota. Minnesotan. Oh God, another one.
So they hired someone who's massively incompetent because
He's losing.
we're going to win anyways.
Well, look what they're doing. They're going to lose Minnesota soon. I mean, we're on the tipping point right now of being a conservative state again, hopefully. But yeah, you look at the deck of people that Minnesota produces here. We had Al Franken, Klobuchar, Tina Smith, Tim Walz. I mean, my God.
Angie Craig.
You know why nobody wants to come to the state? I mean, it's like a freak show here, man.
Yeah.
I mean, at least we don't have like Lindsey Graham or Mitch McConnell. Did you see Mitch McConnell? He dropped twice in one day.
I seen somebody did a meme of him today where he was in front of the microphone explaining why he fell, and he had a bandage around his head.
Oh, that was funny.
All he did was stand there, didn't say anything for 2 minutes,
and stare off. But that was a real press conference. He did that. The bandage was fake, but he really did that.
Yeah. So get him out of office too.
That distant stare, like he sees the Grim Reaper in the back of the room, going. Yeah, so, Mitch. So just to know this, Mitch got elected before J.D. Vance was born. So you see, we don't just rag on Democrats here. There's Republican idiots that we rag on as well. We're equal opportunity.
And the last thing I found was I don't know what the proper word for it is. Maybe you can explain the proper word for it. But this comes from the AP, from a writer who does a lot of Minnesota State Capitol stuff and climate change stuff. He said, under the deal, House Republican leader Lisa DeMuth of Cold Spring was elected as Speaker for 2 years. DeMuth, who is black, is the chamber's first Speaker of color.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Right. Yeah, we were talking about this before. I didn't know, and I don't care. I like Lisa. I mean, we talked to her. Yeah. Why would you put that in the show or in the news?
Yeah, that's one of the top sentences. Yeah. Why is it that important to bring up that she's black?
Yeah.
But then doesn't say a word about Ken Martin being the head of the DNC, who was a white male. There's no mention of that. And it's like, why are you bringing up? So who cares? She's earned her position. She's worked hard.
Yeah.
Who cares what color she is?
Right. It doesn't matter. And that shouldn't even be an attribute of her because it doesn't matter. You're right.
It just, the whole thing doesn't make sense. And so it's hard to read these AP stories because,
yeah.
You have to look at through their lens, which is, this Steve Karnowski. Obviously, he's a racist of some sort. That's all that concerns him. So
yeah, right. Well, I'll tell you what. You want to have a hard time? Try to listen to NPR. I listen to NPR Wisconsin because we get it here in Duluth because we're right over the bridge from them. every story I heard one day was centered around race, and everything had to do with it and how hard it is. And it just, it's so tiresome. It's like, that's all they know. That's all they know how to frame things with. And that's all they
Yeah.
talk about. It's got to be this divisiveness. It's got to be, I'm going to keep pointing out things that are different about you all so you can never get along. We didn't care about this in the 80s. I don't remember any
Right.
talking about this. It was like, we just got along with people. And I don't know. I know what happened. I can tell you exactly what happened. Barack Obama got elected, and that's when things started going really downhill because it really was made a very, very big point.
Right.
In my opinion, that's when everything got really, really messy and nasty, and it works as a political group. It works to keep people divided and not looking at what you're doing, and that's why I like the steamroller, which is Trump, which is they're just going through and doing things and not caring. He doesn't care who he appoints, other than the fact that they can do the job, which is refreshing.
Which is back to meritocracy, which is
right
what Minnesota needs to do.
5-syllable word. Pretty good. I'm up to 3. All right. Well, let's tie it off.
Well, you're not president.
I'm not president. Hey, here's the thing. And I'm serious. Yeah, I can do all that.
Yeah.
Hey, Mac. Hey, Joe. Hey, Bud. I can do all that. So I can be president. Okay. All right. Well, it's been great. We're going to be doing this again next Thursday at 7 p.m. Central. And thanks for coming, or thanks for listening, and have a good night. Talk to you later.